it's not just building capacity for the tricky things. I think for a lot of us, me included, actually the bigger flex or the bigger invitation is to build capacity for centering the things that you actually value and leaning into and owning the fullness of your desires. Welcome to Wild and Finally Fucking Free, the show for disruptors, rebels, and revolutionaries who know they're here to change the damn world. I'm Kylie Patchett, your voice and visibility catalyst, and here we dive into unapologetic truth, magnetic messaging, and visibility that actually feels good in your body, your bones, and your business. We share the stories of the out-of-the-box, neuro-sparkly, creative, witchy wild ones, rewriting how we live, love, learn, and lead. This isn't about being louder. It's about being rooted, resonant, and regulated so you can be real, raw, and ready to roar. If you're done contorting yourself to fit the mold and you're ready to own your voice, your power, and your place in the revolution, welcome home. Let's dive in. Hello, friends. Welcome to another solo episode. If you listened to the last solo episode, you will have heard my reflections on the fact that I have been in a lived experience of fear and freedom being two sides of the same coin. And I have this working theory that the more that we build capacity to feel the overwhelm or the fear or the doubt or whatever we have trying to run interference between us and changing our lives, then we also open up the potential to experience the opposite. So the more power we have been giving to fear, the more we can lean into it and build capacity to feel the reactions in our body and our emotional weather and still stay in the room, stay in the arena, maybe get a bit bruised, maybe a little bit dirty. But yeah, that we actually also open up our capacity for the ease and the flow and the abundance and the joy and all of the things on the other side. So I've also been thinking about, universal orders. Like I have been saying for years that most of us deal with the universe in a way that's like, here's what I want. But I'm only going to fully own it, speak it, desire it, lean into it when I'm feeling like everything's good or everything is like ticking along, going my way. And then what tends to happen, if you're anything like I have always been, as soon as something big or small, my capacity's grown over the years, but there used to be that if anything came across my windshield or my lived experience where it's like, that's not aligned with what I just ordered from the universe, it was almost like I had a little dummy spit and was like, well, fine, I don't want it anyway. Or you're saying you want something, but you're actually not owning the fullness of your desires because there's like a set point of like, how good am I allowed for this to get? And I actually think that that is why my fear brain has been working overtime. I have this theory that because we are making this big leap going overseas and saying the most important things for us to be, do, have is adventure, new experiences, new cultures, that beautiful beginner's mind that happens, new situations, new scenarios. Before we decided we were going away, I had a moment where I said to my husband, I feel like I'm in Groundhog Day. Like I feel like I'm making the same decisions, living the same sort of life. There's not much variety. And of course, for a neurosparkly brain, that's even more uncomfortable. I don't know. If you're also neurosparkly, I would love to hear your lived experience of how much you love change. Because I found myself, I think I've spoken about this in another episode. I found myself in a training the other day and the trainer said, all human beings hate change. And I'm like, I do not hate change. I actually really love what happens in my brain when I have to figure things out or problem solve, but also when I'm seeing something I've never seen, like a beautiful river or experiencing a food I never have, or just getting on and off a train in a foreign country and having to kind of figure all of those things out. And I was like, is that a Kylie thing? Is it a neurosparkly thing? I would have to say that I think it is change that is not my choice and is like thrust upon me when I was going in this direction and then something happens and I'm going in that direction. Yeah, it makes me uncomfortable, but there's still a part of me that's like, oh, how do we respond here? So I wonder if that is, I don't know, is that like a personality quirk or is it an ADHD thing? I don't know. Anyway, in general, I love change. And so my brain has had so much to feast on, but I am also noticing that the more I say yes to freedom, yes to travel, yes to different cultures, yes to beginner's mind, yes to this lush satiation of the senses, the more loud the fear gets. And I feel like this is not something that's spoken about enough. When I'm saying capacity building, mostly I'm talking about it through the lens of being able to hold yourself steady when uncomfortable feelings come up. But as I've been moving through this last probably 18 months, I reckon my personal understanding has expanded because it's not just building capacity for the tricky things. I think for a lot of us, me included, actually the bigger flex or the bigger invitation is to build capacity for centering the things that you actually value and leaning into and owning the fullness of your desires. I remember at the beginning of this year too, I had this moment where I've been doing wealth consciousness work for a long, long time. That was something, a big, big pattern of mine. I've talked about many times on this podcast about working hard to make money or only ever just having enough or that type of thing. And when I was doing that work, I had this realization that my set point for receiving and ease of receiving, like receiving just because, was almost non-existent. And I use the language I often use is like there's an ocean of abundance, and I was holding up a little thimble and saying, just this, please, because I just had no lived experience of owning the fullness of what I truly wanted, which is overflow and more than enough, and being able to use wealth to literally make choices that will impact the world and many, many more people, and, conscious buying and good organic food and supporting local farmers, like all of the things. And I really realized that for me and a lot of my clients is the capacity to hold the ease and the flow and the abundance that is even more tricky. And so now when I talk about being my own solid ground, it's not just in the trying emotions, it's the fullness of it, like the fear and the freedom, the joy and the sorrow, the grief and the gratitude, like this whole polarity of life. I'm not the first one to say this. Anyway, my sense is for most of us, when we make an order to the universe puts our order into its delivery truck and it starts beep, 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 beep out into the street and it's zooming along towards us and our life. And we go, yes, I want this, I want this, I want this. It's not coming. Oh, fine. And the wanting or the desiring or the order changes to, oh, well, just bring me whatever you think. And, if you're at a restaurant and you really wanted the thing that comes to my mind, we haven't had a barbecue for ages. So as soon as I said that, I'm like, I will have organic, grass-fed beef. Sorry for my vegetarian, vegan friends. Beef, medium well, with my own homemade mushroom sauce and a heap of broccoli and asparagus with maybe a little bit of herb butter or something, but not over it because I don't like too much. I'd like to just dip it. That's my order, right? Really, really clear, really explicit. That's exactly what I want. But most of us go, just bring me whatever you think. I don't know. I saw a really cool meme about this on Instagram. If I can find it, I'll put it in the show notes. And this chick's like, I want this, and she keeps on getting the wrong order. And yeah, it's about holding the pose or holding the identity of being a woman who can receive what she's saying she wants before it turns up in her reality. And I think that's what I'm most like the key takeaway from this kind of, I don't know, feeling it through of mine is that identity shifting is the part that allows us to move from someone who wants the thing but can't imagine having the thing, and is definitely not the identity of a woman who actually receives the thing, unless it's to do with sacrifice or working hard or whatever, to the identity and the thoughts and the feelings and the habits and the behaviors and all of those things of a woman who can receive that. And for me, that has been the missing piece on so many of the big, patterns that I've been working for years. It's like, oh my God, why do you do this again? Like, I'm a bit bloody over it. But this is the thing. It keeps coming around and around and around until we have the capacity to hold it. And I am so present to the fact that up until now, I don't think I would have had the capacity to really hold my ground as someone who can say, I'm leaving the country for 12 months at least, and I'm traveling the world and I'm having a big adventure. And so I haven't been. And that's the piece. It's like, you're not a woman who can do these things or receive these things or have these things or desire these things and speak them out loud until you decide you are. And so there's so many of us that believe the bullshit that it's about the surface stuff, like the to-do list or the strategy or hiring the right mentor or doing the right morning routine or journaling for 15 minutes and meditating for 15 minutes and having a green juice and blah, 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 like fill in the bullshit here. Where actually, I really truly believe it's from the inside out. And it's the inside out identity shifts that open up the field of possibilities and the magnetism you have to be able to, A, have the opportunity come to you, and B, to receive it and actually be like, of course, this is just my new normal, right? And so when I was talking about the fear or the close to panic attack in the last episode that I did, which was a solo, I really want to say that I think that the fear is triggered for me much more about centering joy, adventure, beginner's mind, the great unknown, than it is about holding myself through fear. Because actually, I'm pretty good at holding myself through fear. Like I wrote a book about making friends with fear back in 2015, I think, 15 or 16, whatever. This is not new work for me. But what is new work is actually identity shifting over time, because that's the other thing. Like the internet would love us to believe that there is some magic energy medicine practice or meditation or whatever. And it's like this quick external fix. And I'm like, no. Identity shifts from the inside out and no one else can choose it for you. So I guess my question to you is, what do you truly, truly, truly value? And what do you truly, truly, truly desire? And then notice the gaps. Like something that actually made us really say yes to this entire wild idea that we had from one conversation that had nothing to do with travel. It was about, we met our financial planner and we were talking about selling our second block and blah, blah, blah. And then we talked to a real estate agent, and then the real estate agent was talking about renting. And I'm like, hang on a minute, how much can we get for rent? All of that came from this weird collection of events that had nothing to do with travel. And I fully believe that that's because I finally was able to try and emphasize the identity of a woman who can have more joy, more ease, more flow, more ocean. Oh my God, take me to the ocean. Take me to the ocean. I'm so excited about that part. Well, I did just get, a beautiful new pirate scar, which is quite big because of my time in the sun. So Kylie has to be sun safe whilst in the ocean. So what do you value? And something that helped kind of tip over the edge is, I talk a lot about freedom. I talk a lot about my values. I named this podcast Wild and Finally Fucking Free. And if I was being honest with myself, a lot of the Groundhog Day reality was still not almond that was free. It's not the habits, the behaviors, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the decision. I was going to say decision matrix. That sounds very wanky and very corporate, but the decision filters were not one random fly even. Welcome to Australia. Yeah, they weren't aligned to, freedom. So what are your values and where are you not in alignment? And then also my secondary question is, what do you actually desire? And how do you take a couple of steps towards that? Or how do you actually spot where your identity, your thoughts, your feelings, your habits, your behaviors, your beliefs are not matching that? Because no one else gets to decide. No one else can craft your life for you, especially not when it's an inside out job. So that's it from me. Identity shifting, values, desire. And give yourself permission to choose and desire and align to what is actually important to you. And also, I think other important thing is, would I have been ready to do this even 2 years ago or 3 years ago? No, because one of my highest values then was still being very, very present as a parent as my kids were first heading off into the world. So you get to shift and change and grow and evolve, and that means your values are going to change. Your desires will likely change. Where you want to be in the world will likely change. And so just because my value system is freedom, adventure, and basically living in the ocean 24/7, if I could, I would live underwater. Yours might be completely different. You might be in a completely different phase of life where you are nesting and thinking about starting a family, or you've got, teenagers going through that really tricky, full on few years at school where everything feels like it's just socially and emotionally and scholastically, there's a lot of space that needs to be made and held and all that stuff. You might be in a completely different phase, and that's okay. The wild woman inside of you knows the answer to those two questions. What do you value? What do you desire? Where are the gaps? And it's time to lean in. It's time to lean in, friend. Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If this episode lit a fire in your body, in your business, deep down in your bones, please take a moment to drop a rating and review so more rebels just like you can find us. And don't keep this goodness to yourself. Share it with your disruptive rebel and revolutionary friends who are ready to roar right alongside of you. Until next time, stay wild, stay unapologetic, and stay fucking free.